Excited to bring in one of my close friends, a guy that I truly respect in college baseball, and I'm excited to dive into this conversation. The associate head coach at UC Santa Barbara, Donegal Fergus. Fergie, thanks for jumping on with us.
What's up, Sheets?
Not much, brother.
It's
How you doing?
great to be here.
It is an honor to be here with you. You enjoy the chairs?
These chairs are fantastic. Like I'm if I wasn't flying home, if I had my pickup truck, I'd put one in the back because this is showtime.
You and hopefully about 6,500 other guys have sat in these. Yeah, they're really really positive chairs. They look great in my living room. My wife would hate it, but
this could be your throne though, which is I think appropriate for you.
I need a throne. I'm going to talk to Chelsea about that. Let's go into this. I want to start with obviously you preparing for the main stage this year, and we could probably spend I could sit here and talk an hour with you about recruiting because that's obviously where you've really made your bread and butter out in coaching. But going up on the main stage. Obviously, number one, how excited are you to do that? It's an honor to obviously jump up there in front of those coaches. But then give us a little breakdown of what you want to really go into inside your clinic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously thank you for giving me the opportunity and having that conversation about trying to bring some different topics, which we've talked about over the years, and I think is really that's a cool thing to expand our world at this thing. I mean, the ABCA is such a cool organization, and then this event has such good stuff for people.
No doubt.
I don't know. This is my 18th year in coaching, I think, and this is probably 15th convention. And every year I get something cool. And so to be able to be someone who's going to give a topic that hasn't been talked about a lot is pretty cool for me. It's obviously something that I've had some success with and failed at a lot, which is what our business is about. So
as we all have.
Yeah, I'm excited to do it. I mean. I like to talk about what I do and how we do it, and I'm passionate about that. So it's to stand up there in front of all my peers. It's a bucket list thing. Obviously, it's something I think every coach in this business at some point would like to do and try their hand at it. I'm fired up to do it. We'll see how it goes. I've got some thoughts and some notes and some slides, and we'll see how it goes.
Try to dim the lights on you.
Yeah, I asked for some lighting options, and I'm not sure what I'm going to get, but I'm gonna make the most of it.
I'm not going to call you high maintenance. I'm just going to say,
there's some diva in there. I'll own that.
Creative vision.
Yes.
All right, so I really want to crack this shell because I think we could spend so much time. But I told you from day one, this is going to be a tough thing to do. You've got professional coaches, you've got college coaches, you've got upper level college coaches, you've got small college coaches, you've got high school travel coaches, youth coaches in the crowd. So how are you going to really tackle this? What do you expect those guys to really put in their bag and take home with them?
Yeah, when you and I first talked about this topic, obviously I was excited, but then as I started to think about it more, I'm like, how do I do that? How do I bridge that entire gap of so much of this is built around something that everybody can take away, right? So we talk about double play feeds, we talk about pickoff moves, we talk about holding runners. That's something that every baseball coach can work with. Like we all have to do that stuff. Recruiting isn't that same topic. I can't just put a bunch of videos up there of drills that we do for recruiting. I mean, you could video me, with a radar gun or a stopwatch and how we do that, or
how to pack a bag with granola bars.
Exactly, and fill up your canteen and all that kind of stuff, or do a reality show of talking to moms and dads on campus. That's not the easiest thing to put on into a slide deck and to reach across all of those levels. So as I started to go through it, it was apparent to me the challenge of trying to get something that was accessible to enough people. So what I ended up sort of gravitating towards is the idea of what is the recruiting process really about? Like ultimately at our level, at the college level, and really even in the professional guys, it's still recruiting in a certain way because you're still looking at players, you're evaluating players, you're working with programs, you're trying to pick the right player, you're trying to get to know them. It's a different process, but it's ultimately the same, which is trying to find the players that can help your organization.
That's right.
And I think even in high school and travel ball, that happens. And obviously, I don't want to say that high school coaches are recruiting players, but you're trying to find kids that can help your program and grow them. So I think those fundamental values and fundamental processes of getting to know people are universal in this game. And so I approached it from that standpoint of what's at the center of it all, and it's our players.
That's right.
Like ultimately, that's what this whole thing revolves around. So I'm trying to touch on how the player acquisition, evaluation, growth process happens for each of us.
No doubt.
And how they all weave together How do I find players that help me? How do I help those players then get into professional baseball?
Right.
How do the high school guy who's trying to help his player get better, but also find a college program to play for? How do we work together to find the right fit for his players?
Right.
How do we do our jobs better as college recruiters? How do you do your job better as a high school and travel ball coach to get your players seen? And I think there's a lot of times it's easy in this business, especially now with social media, to go grumpy old man and just the kids these days and high school coaches don't know what they're doing and my job's so hard and we make ourselves too important in that thing. And ultimately we're coaching baseball and we're trying to find good kids to come into our program. And so if we look at it from from that perspective, I think we can all do our jobs better. So that's where I went with it, is trying to reach everybody a little bit and say, hey, I'm not perfect at what I do. We're still figuring this thing out from a regulation standpoint even. But how do we all work together better to get what we ultimately all want, which is our players to have some success?
Sure. I was wondering if you were going to switch on me. Oh, I'm holding it.
What did he say?
Nothing. I'm hitting that.
I affected him.
I affected you. I'm hitting that tea, honey moment. I don't want to be chewing gum. That's the one thing I don't need in my life. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. I think I'll be fine. Okay. Reassume the position. So let's do this, Ferg. Let's layer by layer this real quick. Let's spend some time here with the travel high school coach. All right. So speaking specifically to them, what from your perspective, again, throughout college baseball across all levels and obviously multiple success, hanging out in Omaha last year and now taking on a new position at UC Santa Barbara. When you're talking to that high school or travel coach, what are some things that they can maybe frame differently, do differently, approach differently to really help their players in recruiting?
Yeah, I think ultimately, again, it goes back to what's your objective.
Okay.
If your objective is, hey, I can put another notch on my belt that I send a guy to the Pac-12 or the SEC or whatever it might be, or Division I,
Sure.
then you're going to miss some opportunities to really help your player. If your objective is to truly help your player find the place where they can have the career that they want or want to try and achieve, then I think you approach it differently, and I think you're a little more targeted, and I think you're a little more thoughtful about where you're going to start that process. And I think one of the things I'll talk about tomorrow is sort of the enormity of the whole thing. You're like, well, there's 1,600 college baseball programs in the country. Like, how am I going to find? First of all, that's awesome because there are that many opportunities perhaps for my player. But now, how do I find the right one for my guy?
Right.
And is it the one just down the street, or is it the one all the way across the country? And who knows? And so it's a little bit like when you're a kid and your parents are yelling at you to clean your room, and you're like, I don't even know where to start. Like this thing is a war zone. Where do I begin?
It's an elephant. Take one bite at a time.
Exactly. And so you start, go and reach out. And I think what too often happens is outside influences come in there and say, hey, I'll help you. I know these guys. Well, I'll reach out. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. And that's where I think travel ball coaches can sometimes get maybe a little bit ahead of themselves in promising things to parents. And I think that's one of the knocks of well-intentioned travel ball coaches and high school coaches is those outliers that maybe promise a little bit too much. I think if you're genuinely working with your families to say, hey, where do you want to go? What are you capable of from an academic and financial standpoint and a travel standpoint? Where would you like to go? What are the priorities in picking a school? Start to listen to them first.
Yeah.
And now you'll go, oh, you know what? I've got an idea for you. These guys over here sound like what you're talking about.
Right.
And this place has this. And you'll start to narrow some of that stuff down before you even get started. And now you're not wasting your time, their time, and our time in spinning our wheels. And we get bombarded every day with emails and texts and phone calls from really well-intentioned coaches. But then what we have to do is sift through that. Well, what's his academic status, and what's his family like, and what are the tools like, and what does he do? What kind of worker is he, and what kind of teammate is he? So we got to go through all of that. What all of us are looking for from a baseline standpoint. He needs to be a great kid, needs to be a hard worker, needs
No
to be
doubt.
a pretty decent student for most places.
Yep.
You know, and if he's not, then let's talk to the junior colleges and
Right.
NIAs that
Right.
can really help them with that piece of it. So I think again, it goes back to starting at the beginning and saying let's listen to our players and our families and say what do we need for you, and I think that will help most of those coaches direct their energies into a better spot.
Right.
Doing the homework on the front end is huge, and I don't expect you to know everything about how we do things in our program and,
Sure.
and anybody else, but
That's your job to articulate
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
But you can begin that process by doing a little bit of homework, maybe reaching out to coaches in general and saying, hey, I've got players, I'm trying to help them. What can I do with you specifically
Right.
to help filter through this? You know, I think
Wow.
every coach operates a little bit differently. I think some like to just be bombarded. Some go, hey, just hit me with it all.
Sure.
Fire hose me, and I'll figure it out. Okay, great.
Right.
And some are like, hey, don't call me unless you've got a no doubt lock it down dude.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or don't call me at all. Like, just send me an email. I don't.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, everybody's got a little bit different
Sure.
style. So what I think is doing that outreach, and we need to do it too as college
Yep.
coaches. We need to build those
We're
relationships.
going there. Yep.
So I think that's a two-way street, and again, that's some of the stuff I'll talk about tomorrow. Is how do we meet in the middle on some of this stuff, and we've got to do our job, but you can really help us by being a little more proactive on understanding who we are as coaches and programs.
I love that. Okay. And then we're just going to shift right down to the college
Sure.
coach. So the college coach working their way of the lifeblood of their program hinging on their recruiting, right?
Yeah.
So they have a vested interest in that high school coach being great at what he does, communicating well. The travel coach really being well-intentioned and trying to find the right fit for the player as opposed to a notch on the belt. From the college coach down, how do you see it? What's some advice you'd give?
You know, I think it's for those young guys who are trying to figure this recruiting thing out, or just, you know, guys that have been doing it a little while but want to get better at it.
Sure.
I think being purposeful with your plan really helps most guys. Again, I use the analogy of you've got a giant mess to clean up. Well, where do I start? Okay, well, just start.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you know, if you've got 47 left-handed hitting first baseman on your big board, boy, that's going to be tough for you to narrow that thing down until you just get to narrowing it down. And I think the simple things like that can really help guys
Sure.
make a better plan. I think when I first started, certainly, I got thrown to the wolves. I was coaching junior college as assistant coach.
Right.
My uncle was the boss. He figured he'd make up for whatever I screwed up anyway. It just kind of threw me out there. Go find some players. And, I just went and watched games and go like, oh, that guy looks good, that guy looks good.
Yep.
And you start just fire hosing the whole thing. It wasn't until I realized, wait a minute, let me stop and think, what do we need? Who's coming back? You know, that roster management, I think, is so easy to think about in hindsight, but so often we get enamored with, oh, there's a shiny object over here. Oh, look at this
Right.
player. He's really good. You already got two of those same guys. He's good, no question. You're
Yeah.
right on the evaluation,
Yeah.
but does he fit what you're looking for and what you need? Or now are you having some redundancy built in that now you shortchange yourself over here on the other side
true.
because you just don't look at it from a macro level enough.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing I see in on the college side of how do I approach the targeting? How do I go find the players we need? Also, just being articulate about what do we want? What kind of player do we want? I mean,
Right.
everybody says, oh, we want tough guys, we want character kids. Sure, I get that.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean to you? And I've had the good fortune, and sometimes not so fun fortune, but good fortune of working for some pretty impressive people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned through that process, and especially in my last 5 years at Washington, is, boy, you need to find the right kind of makeup and the right kind of kid to fit a certain staff.
Sure.
And
Sure.
And my boss now at Santa Barbara, Coach Checkitts, could not be more different than my boss at Washington.
Right.
And it is an entirely different type of kid that is going to be drawn towards those two segments, but also really be able to flourish in there. Now, you also factor in your own abilities and
Right.
what's my role in that and how do I fit into that equation. So you're selling yourself, your boss, your program, and you're trying to identify those kids that who's going to work with us.
Sure.
I always tell kids and parents when we work with them, like, this dynamic between you and I needs to be good.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, it's okay.
Yep.
Like it's totally okay. But if it's really good, that's when the magic can happen.
Wow.
And but you have to identify what that is. What does that mean to you?
Right.
What does that mean to you from a coaching standpoint of a good kid can mean a million different things. Like,
Sure.
there's lots of great kids in this country. There's lots of them. Doesn't mean they can fit with what you want to do and how you
right.
approach it. And I think we're all kidding ourselves. We're deluding ourselves in a lot of ways to think, well, I'll make up for that, or it'll be fine, or just get him around our guys and he'll be okay. Like, I just think too many of us are willing to overlook some of those things that are red flags. And it doesn't mean that kid won't work brilliantly somewhere else.
Sure.
But it may not be here, and that's okay too.
It's a fair point. I want to go back to something you mentioned, because I think there's might be some gold here real quick. You're thinking about, again, recruiting for Washington, and again, the dynamics in place, the type of player that you're going to need in that program. Certainly it showed on the field, the regionals, the World Series appearance, and now shifting to a new staff, new head coach. Really, you're able to put your stamp on the culture and what Coach Checketts and his vision is for it, and recruiting differently. How's that challenged you? Go into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, because for the last 5 years, I've been recruiting very, very specifically for my boss.
Sure.
Because he was such a strong personality and in a lot of ways, difficult to play for and work for, and that's a challenge. You've got to find the right kids that can manage that.
Sure.
And we weren't perfect at it. Jason Kelly and I were certainly not perfect at it, but we had back-to-back top 15 national recruiting classes and got to the World Series. So we managed to find a way to find the right fit of kids for that. But that was very specifically for that situation there.
Right.
You also had to be able to handle the weather, the academics. Like, you had to have kids who were like, they didn't care about that other stuff.
Right.
They didn't get caught up. Now, we had a beautiful ballpark, incredible school, football, and all the rest at that place. Like, it's an incredible place.
Sure.
So you had a lot of great things, but you also had some things that you had to have kids who goes, I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. It doesn't matter to me that it's going to rain for 6 months. Like, I'm okay. I'm tough enough to handle.
Fun.
Yeah. And so now it's almost flipped completely. You have to find kids who almost want a little hardship, because there's very few hardships at our place. Our guys
moving there next week, by the way.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's perfect for me in the flip-flop life. Our guys have their own hashtag on social media. We live at the beach, and literally, and it's not even kidding. They live on a beach, and so you have to find kids that are tough enough and disciplined enough to overcome sort of a lack of adversity in that way. Wow. You also have a head coach who's tough and diligent, but not not an in-your-face, not a beat-you-down sort of person.
Sure.
And certainly that's not my nature. I'm a energy and let's have a great time and let's get after it. It's more Pete Carroll than Nick Saban, I guess, if you want to use that football analogy.
Yep.
So you have to look for kids who and again, a lot of them you're getting are upper economic families. They've got they haven't had a lot of hardships in their life, but they've got some personal discipline in there to say, hey, all of this stuff, why this place is so great, it's awesome, and I'll enjoy it.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm also going to be able to put in the work without slipping up. And it's a radically different way to approach things. At Washington, half the year you don't want to go outside and have a good time, because you just go to the cage. Like, that's the safe place. And so it's an interesting challenge. Now, you get a kid on campus there and you take him to the beach and
it's over.
Yeah, I mean, lock it in. But you do need to dig down a little bit more, and you need to find kids who have some of that, we call it obsession.
Okay.
And it's sort of the serial killer instinct to say, I have to go and work. I have to go do my thing. I don't feel right if I haven't got my lift in and my run in and my hitting session or my throwing session in, or gotten 20 minutes of ground balls. Like, I just don't feel right if I haven't done that.
Right.
We need kids like that that really have that sort of intrinsic motivation and personal discipline.
Right.
And so it's been fun, because you're in a great place, and so you have a natural breeding ground for that. But you do still have to be very intentional about the type of kid you're getting. And again, it comes back to that personal relationship that you develop with
100%.
somebody. And one of the things I'm going to talk about tomorrow is we keep pulling away from our time with players in the recruiting process.
Right.
And you can't talk to them until then, and you can't talk to them until now, and they can't visit until this time. And I think sometimes, and I'm not saying that we need to turn it into the wild, wild west.
Sure.
But we need time with players and parents to get to know them, and they need it with us.
Right.
Because if that word fit is really going to be true, we have to have a relationship. We have to have spent enough time with each other and done enough together to know I know what you're about. I know what your values are. I know what your foundation is, and you know what I'm about, and we can work together, and we're fired up about that.
How about that? Okay. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I want to go to ABCA a little bit
Yeah.
because you think about a person like yourself, and I remember a couple of opportunities when I was coaching that we spent time together here at the convention, obviously being here on staff, spending time here at convention, and I know that you've seen the transformation of this association, and certainly watching us break records even this year here in Dallas, looking ahead to Nashville, which could be bigger, in DC after that. Specifically for you, when you look at the growth of the ABCA, how have you seen it grow? What are the areas that you think maybe we've really got a head of steam and momentum inside of it? And then what, obviously from where you sit, how's it feel to be part of this fraternity?
It's so cool. It really is, and I've seen, when I went to my first one, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know anything, and I'm just wandering around, and you just see the buzz, and you listen, and you try and take it all in, and you go through that process. You're like, wow, this is quite a thing.
Sure.
And for the first few years that I went to that, it was awesome, and I got really good information like everybody. But I think what you guys have done recently in the last couple of years, and this is all credit to you, about your push from a marketing's the wrong word. It's really more about awareness, I think, is probably the better term of just getting our message out and getting the personalities out there, like highlighting the members that we have and the diverse cross section of people that we have in this thing, and showcasing those people is incredible. And I think it's the Twitter and Instagram stories and connections that you've done it's taken it to an entirely new level, and it's been incredible to watch, and to be a little bit part of it is really cool. I feel like I'm a little bit behind the curtain because you and I met years ago, being schlubs on the camp circuit, and I'm like, wow, it's so cool to see behind the curtain and see how this has progressed.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. Our team has worked diligently, for the last 5 years to be cognizant that we felt like we had a real opportunity to do some neat things. And again, it was pretty neat. A couple hours ago, Dave Kylitz, former executive director, stops by, and he's fired up. He's looking at it all, taking it all in, and he goes, I just love what's happening here. And again, to hear his perspective of really the person that, and I told him this, that built the platform for us and this team to come in and build upon, that gave us the stable place of professionalism and class, especially the relationships with our vendors, our coaches. But our team saw a real possibility that we could take some risks, we could do some things differently, we could attack social media in a different way, we could create elements like this podcast, we could generate if we're great at coaching clinics, let's take that show on the road. Certainly you were part of the piece of the puzzle to bring us up to Seattle in 2016 for Barnstormers, and just have that courage to be able to do that. And it's really been, again, that's the rewarding part for this, is sitting back and watching the conversations and seeing the smiles, and obviously catching up with old friends and seeing this thing come together. And again, I just go back to, and there's Dave Kylitz as he walks by, is just is really just seeing this brotherhood really almost amp up,
There's no question, and what and I don't know the process that went into deciding that you were the guy for this, but genius. Like,
well,
the 6 degrees of
Craig here anywhere? Because he needs to hear this.
Yes, genius. You need a raise, Craig. The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon should now be called the 6 degrees of Sheets, because you have been able to, with personality and just the connections you already had, of spreading that network, which is really what this thing is so incredible for. The ABCA, and going back to again, my early experiences with it, it was a standalone event, it felt like.
Sure.
And I'm sure there were other things that I could have latched onto or gotten involved in, but it felt, I think, to a lot of us like it was a standalone event. Like, you went to the convention and you learned, and that was your little window into seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't feel like that anymore.
Right.
Now it's like you're building this suspense of, I can't wait to get there because I know what's coming.
That's right.
And I know the people I get to see and interact with. And I mean, as you, I called you last night to somebody, the mayor of this whole thing. But it's so great because I don't know how many people now that I meet that say, oh, hey, I saw you on this, and the ABCA chat, and Sheets talked about you, and
Yep.
it all works back together. And I look at some of the people that are, like, even speaking this year, with Gilly and Justin James and
Yep.
the backgrounds that we all have and the way we all connected and met each other
That's right.
through you and through other things like that. That's the really cool part of this thing, and that's what you guys have done just an incredible job of is really expanding that spider web of connections, and it's not just the one event now. It's a whole year of activities and clinics, and that's the power of the group is we can give everybody better information, and you used to do it in a 3-day package once a year, and now it happens all year, and I think that's incredible, and it's something that I'm not sure that many other organizations could pull off in the same way, and the baseball coach by nature I think is a little bit traditional, but curious about the new stuff, and let's dab a little bit, and you've opened that world up to a lot of those guys, and it's cool, man.
Well, there's two things that I was concerned with bringing you up here.
Yeah.
One is that I would get
only two, huh?
Only two. Only two things. One was that I would get mesmerized by your beard.
Yes.
It happened twice.
Yes.
And the other one is that there might be way too much Irish blood on this stage right now.
There's way too many freckles for sure,
For sure.
and white skin.
No doubt.
It's a danger when you put the two of us up here.
Well,
is that I don't know where there's a representative from the Irish national team here.
It's gotta be
I don't know.
somewhere.
I don't know where he's at, but I'm sure his homing beacon is going off right now.
They should take a picture and put it on their website because it doesn't get much better than this. Ferg, thanks for jumping on with us. Go crush Dallas, crush the main stage. We look forward to catching up with you.
Thanks, buddy.
No doubt.